I could run through this whole match. It was on its way to being a really strong match. I thought it was still a very good match. Unfortunately, you can't really go much further than the ending to all of this. A really unfortunate stop.
They went 25 minutes
It
before
went
this happened.
25. Yeah. So, I mean, you had a great match. It's not like this just happened in the early going of it. They were probably getting close to that closing stretch. And I will say, those 25 minutes, sometimes the minutes can drag in some of these. This was one where I couldn't believe it was already at 25 minutes. They went, I thought, very quick here. But the closing spot is Kota Ibushi climbing to the top for a Phoenix splash, and he just lands the wrong way. Like, I don't know if he just posted wrong on the arm, but it's his right arm just takes all the damage. And Red Shoes is checking in on him, and he's clutching onto the wrist, and the match is called off at the 25-minute mark. And Chris Charlton and Kevin Kelly handled this so well, of having to be live and react in real time to this injury. Chris is comparing it to Eddie Guerrero in 2000. There was actually a very similar situation involving Kota Ibushi and Prince Devitt back in the finals of the Best of the Super Juniors, when Kota did a 450 and messed up his arm coming down, and they finished the match, but it was eerily similar here. This one, they did not go to the finish, thankfully. We always talk about like these big kind of matches like this. You could see it was a bad state when Kota could not move for a long time. He was pretty stationary. I thought it was handled very well when Chris said for the cameras to maybe just lay out here and not try to show the doctor working on him. It was just, this was like a real sports moment where you had to just react in the moment, and everyone was concerned for how bad this was, especially given Kota Ibushi and what this guy has put his body through, what he has worked through, that for this to bring, this was not him protesting the end either. Like we don't have an update on the severity of the injury, but it has to be not good.
Especially given the circumstance. This was not just any G1 match. This was the culmination of a month plus long tournament in the main event in the Budokan. So if somebody as tough as Kota Ibushi is willing to have a match end, then it had to be incredibly serious. It was probably the most chilling end to a G1 tournament like there probably has been. Just the visual of like Okada laying in the corner, completely like face blank as his music is playing in the background, declaring him the G1 victor. I feel like this was unfortunately, a G1 that will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. But it's a sobering reminder that this is a high risk athletic activity. And I'm very, at least, happy to see that we are putting the safety of the performers. In this case, there probably wasn't much of a choice.
But in this one, it was pretty clear, but still, it's not like Red Shoes was hesitant. He was very quick to call for the bell. And we always talk about like what happens when it's the biggest match going and there is a problem to a performer. And we're going to talk about this next week with WrestleMania 19 and Brock Lesnar with the shooting stars screw up. And they continued and had to get to the finish. And I would hope in today's day and age that would not be the case. But in this one, like there was no controversy here because there was no continuing for Kota Ibushi, and there was no hesitation on Red Shoes. Like to him, it's like, I don't care where we are, what this match is, what the booking is. This guy is not continuing, and they took care of this the way it should have been handled.
The health of the performers takes complete precedent over any sort of script, no matter how carefully it's been mapped out. Now, thankfully, in this situation, it looks like Okada winning was the intended outcome anyway. Given like the Tama Tonga challenge at the end.
Yeah.
So I mean,
at first though, you're hearing Okada, who's got to still do his speech, and his only focus is, this is not the ending I wanted. So he's pushing like, we've got to do this again. Me and Ibushi have to have another match. And you're starting to wonder, like, is he just thinking ahead that if this is something that hopefully is not a serious injury, that they can do this rematch? But you're right. Immediately after, backstage is the angle with Tama Tonga, and like it certainly, I came away with this with the assumption that Okada was winning this, but I cannot say 100%.
No, we can't. But I would maybe a bit safely say, and I would also safely say that no matter what, Ibushi was probably going to be involved in that top mix anyway. Probably they were intending on this being a very close affair with Okada ultimately coming out the victor and probably challenging for a rematch at some point anyway. But with the circumstance of this, let me I'll also say I don't know if there's a better person to put in this situation to close out such an awkward, sad, bittersweet situation as a Kazuchika Okada. I don't understand Japanese, but I think the poise and the delivery in which he gave this final speech and what he was able to say to wrap up the situation involving, the not ignoring the accident but making mention of it. I thought he gave this crowd like a bit of a feeling of celebration when there really wasn't much to be taken from, but also hope, for a future outcome. So, do you want to talk a bit about what Okada actually said here? Because I found that to be pretty interesting.
Right. So after the Tamatonga involvement, he did this whole speech, and essentially he is stating that the IWGP heavyweight title doesn't exist any longer, and he's trying to position like the G1 champion as equal, if not above, the the status of where Shingo Takagi is right now, almost very dismissive of Shingo Takagi. And Takagi was on commentary, so they go back and just have it on him. It's very much like Okada is almost like creating his own championship that would put like three titles now into the New Japan universe between Takagi, Will Ospreay, and now Okada, which is interesting when we've got the three shows to book for January.
Yeah, yeah. He made it seem like he wanted to retain, like he was still considering himself the heavyweight championship. So I don't know if he's going to bring back the old belt or what, but he's essentially kind of ignoring what Kota Ibushi did by separating the titles, and he's still like it's their way of basically setting up, something for Wrestle Kingdom. And I don't know if this calls into question like Osprey's status, whether or not he'll be able to make it for that or what. But man, three belts is a lot, don't you think? Like if it is three, so maybe they'll just keep it to these two. I'm not sure, but there's some shenanigans here going on to fill these main events.
Yeah, and not a whole lot of time. Like we're at the almost the end of October. So I mean that those Tokyo Dome shows are going to have to start to have a pretty clear picture by the end of Power Struggle. I would think like that's a pretty big show to shoot a lot of these angles and see what the direction is. Because after Power Struggle, like you've got the best of the Super Juniors and World Tag League, and then we're right into January.
I think it's pretty safe to say we're getting at Shingo versus Okada, at least for one of the evenings. Tama Tonga is challenging for the briefcase, it looks like, but I
I would
don't
imagine
see
that's
that.
Power Struggle. Like it looks like we're like my guess would be Shingo and Zach, Tanahashi and Kenta, Okada and Tamatonga. They teased a never six man, which could be a Korakuen Hall show, or that might be too much for Power Struggle. But at least those top three matches I could see for Osaka.
Yeah, we'll probably find out shortly.